Hello and welcome to this video. I will now show you how the Foxy tank top is sewn. You can find the pattern for the tank top in my Etsy shop. I show you the address here, but of course you can also find a direct link to the pattern with further information under this video. The tank top is tight-fitting, has a round neckline and, for a tank top, slightly wider straps of 5 cm, under which you can hide any bra strap easily. Tank top Foxy can either be sewn in the long version, then it reaches down to the hips, so it can be worn as an undershirt, for example, even in winter. Or you sew it in the cropped version, then it extends to the waist and thus fits perfectly with high-waisted bottoms, such as the Brandy skirt, or Nokia cycling shorts from the DIY Mode Cream collection. Now I'll show you how the Foxy tank top is sewn. Here you can see the cut pieces. You need the front part cut once on the fold and the back part cut once on the fold. The best thing to do is to make a small notch for later in the crease right above. I didn't transfer the other notches for the main part myself, because I don't find them so important here. The strips for the arm and neckline should actually be cut at a 45-degree angle. But I cut it to the normal width to save fabric and I think it works flawlessly. You can of course decide for yourself how you handle this. Transfer the armhole binding notches to your 2 strips. You need the neckline binding once, the notches are also important here. It is best to mark the notches for your size on the pattern to not get confused. The ends of the stripe later form a shoulder seam, the middle is the other shoulder seam and the notches, with size specifications, are later the front center and the back center. Put all 3 strips right sides together on the short sides. Place the 2 main parts right sides together and pin the 2 shoulders and sides together. Now sew all parts with the overlock. The seam allowance in the width of an overlock seam is already included in the pattern. If you don't have an overlock, you can sew all the seams that I sew with the overlock with a stretchable stitch on your sewing machine. The seam allowance is then the width of a presser foot. At the side seam you have a kind of little corner in it for the hem. I sew with the overlock until the whole point of the corner is bound, turn the needles up, lift the presser foot and then turn the fabric so that the rest of the distance is back to the edge of the cutter. I sew the 3 stripes in one go. With such short distances, I make sure to put the fabric exactly under the needle so that the first stitch lands in the fabric straight away. I then find it easier for the fabrics not to slip. And this is how the parts should look now. Prepare the bindings by first ironing the seam in one direction and then folding the binding together into their later shape and ironing them all around. Also iron the seams of the main part into shape. The shoulder seams and side seams are always ironed to the back. I like to do this from the outside to iron the seam apart at the same time, so I turn the top right side out. Now the bindings and top come together. For the neckline, place the binding with the seam on one shoulder seam. Then you have 3 more notches. 2 that are closer together, these belong to the back, and a notch that is further away from the others belongs to the front center. Pin the binding like this, notch on notch. All open edges point in the same direction. Put the 2 short strips on your armhole as well. Here the notch comes on the shoulder seam and the seam on the side seam below. Sew on the bindings with the overlock. You have to stretch the stripes a little bit so that they are as long as the fabric underneath. Take your time for these steps and always make sure that all edges are on top of each other. At the end, pull in or knot the overlock seam. You can put the bottom hem 2 cm inwards all around and pre-iron and pin it. On this occasion, it is best to iron the neck and armholes flat, so that the overlock seam is inside the top. Sew the hem in place with the twin needle. Optionally, you can of course first neaten the edge before ironing and then work with a stretchable stitch. When sewing with the twin needle, sew a little less than 2 cm to the edge so that you definitely sew the edge of the fabric on the other side. Start on one side seam, Sew all around and finish in the same place where you lock stitch. Also sew the neck and armholes with the twin needle or a stretchable stitch so that the seam lies on the top part. In this way you sew on the overlock seam underneath and ensure that the strips always lie flat even after washing. Here you also start on a seam and end the round at the same point in which you lock stitch. And your Foxy is finished. I hope you liked the instructions and your tank top turned out well. Make sure to also take a look at the other sewing projects from this pattern collection. For example, Nokia, shorts and Brandy, jersey skirt that conjure up a self-sewn outfit from your top. If you have sewn tank top, Foxy, and want to show it on Instagram, feel free to tag me in your picture with DIY mode patterns. I regularly share the most beautiful works from the DIY mode community there. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave me some love with a thumbs up or a comment. I am looking forward to seeing you with my next video again. Until then, I wish you all the best.